Illinois.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
Mr. President, we're facing a deadline tonight. At midnight, the current reauthorization of the Federal Aviation Administration expires. That expiration will mean that no funds can be collected or paid out of the Airport and Airways Trust Fund starting tomorrow, July 23rd. The trust fund provides the primary source of funding for the Federal Aviation Administration through excise taxes imposed on airline tickets, aviation fuel, and air cargo shipments. We asked the Federal Aviation Administration and the Secretary of Transportation what would happen if the extension is not passed today in the United States Senate. And he said as follows: there will be a partial shutdown of Federal Aviation Administration operations. Approximately 4,000 non-essential FAA staff will be furloughed. 143 of those employees, incidentally, work in my state, mostly in Chicago. The Airport Improvement Program, which provides construction project grants to airports, will be shut down and unable to obligate grants for projects. Projects already obligated will be able to continue, for example, the O'Hare project, Quad Cities runways in Illinois, but obligating funds for new projects will be suspended. If the extension continues for a period of time, there may be reimbursement issues with projects that are underway. There's an unresolved question as to whether or not this failure to extend the FAA authorization will have an impact on the fees that we collect, the aviation taxes and fees that we collect from airlines for their operations. It's not clear yet whether or not we will lose that revenue or can recapture it if we reach an agreement at a later time. Majority Leader Reid and Chairman Jay Rockefeller have told House leaders that a shutdown is likely unless a clean extension can be passed. The Senate is hotlining a clean extension today, which I will go to next. There are no objections to this clean extension on the Democratic side, but we do expect an objection from the Republican side. I want to tell you that the request that I make for this extension, this clean extension, is in the name of Chairman Jay Rockefeller from your state of West Virginia. This is a sad commentary on the political state of affairs in Congress today. Mr. President, this is the 21st extension of this authorization. How could we possibly explain to America that we have been unable so many times to extend this authorization for something so critical to our commerce and our economy? But now we're facing the most serious challenge we've ever had when it comes to this extension, and that is the expiration of it this evening, a direct impact on the people who work for the FAA and a direct impact on their operations. Now, I might add very quickly, to give peace of mind to people, this will not have an impact on air traffic control and safety of our airlines, not at all. But the orderly operation of the FAA is at risk here. What is this all about? It's a battle over a program called Essential Air Service. Essential Air Service, if I'm not mistaken, was initiated by your predecessor, Senator Robert C. Byrd of West Virginia. At the time of deregulation of airlines, a decision was made that the smaller communities across America needed a helping hand to maintain air service. We have it in Illinois. Over the years, we have reconsidered it, amended it, changed it. It's really a shadow of what it started out to be. It's a very small program by standards of the original program. There's a battle going on between the House and the Senate now, between Republicans in the House and the Democratic leadership in the Senate about the future of this program. And, Mr. President, I just want to say, in all fairness and all honesty, for goodness sakes, to both sides, we believe you save that battle to another day. Let us not jeopardize the operations of the Federal Aviation Administration because of a squabble over an important but relatively small program. And that's what's going to happen. What we're going to hear after I make this request is an objection from the Republican side to extending this authorization of the Federal Aviation Administration with a clean extension, making no statement about change in policy. Just says, don't jeopardize the operations of the FAA. Let's keep them in business. Let's fight this out next week or the week after on the essential air service issue, but let's move forward and let the FAA do its business with a clean bill that doesn't take sides on who's right and who's wrong on essential air service. What I'm offering is neutrality, political neutrality, a clean extension. What I'm afraid I'm going to get back is an insistence that if you don't take the House Republican proposal, we'll shut it down. I don't think that's a good choice for America. Let us, as politicians, do our battles here. Let's never do them at the expense of ordinary people across America who are trying to do good work to improve our airports and to make sure that we have the safest runways and the safest air operations in the world. That should be our highest priority. And so I'm going to make this request for a clean extension without getting into this political squabble at all. And I hope that the Republicans will not object. I hope that we can extend this authorization for the Federal Aviation Administration. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the consideration of calendar number 109, H.R. 2553, that a Rockefeller-Hutchison substitute amendment, which is at the desk, be agreed to, the bill as amended be read a third time and passed, and the motions to reconsider be laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
I object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President,
Senator from Utah.
I would like to take just a few minutes to explain my objection to the legislation just offered by my esteemed colleague. I want to make it absolutely clear that a long-term FAA reauthorization is a priority for this country and a priority for myself, and I've said as much repeatedly. The consent request just offered by my colleague, even if accepted, would not prevent a lapse of current law. As my colleagues are likely aware, the House has completed legislative business for the week, so the only way to prevent a disruption to FAA funding is to pass Chairman Mica's bill the House passed earlier this week. I worked with Finance Committee Chairman Baucus to report a tax title from the Finance Committee to the bill that passed the Senate earlier this year. However, since then, progress on a long-term reauthorization has been slow. I share House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee Chairman Mica's frustration that favors to organized labor have overshadowed the prospects for long-term FAA reauthorization. Last year, the National Mediation Board changed the rules under which employees of airlines and railroads are able to unionize. For decades, the standard has been that a majority of employees would have to agree in an election to form a union. However, the new National Mediation Board rules changed that standard so that all it takes to unionize is a majority of the employees who vote. Now, this means that the MNB wants to count an employee who doesn't vote as voting for big labor. Somehow, organized labor is able to claim that it is democratic to appropriate someone else's vote without that person's input and participation. The FAA reauthorization bill that passed the House earlier this year undoes this heavy-handed rule and lets airline employees decide for themselves how to use their own votes. The House bill would merely undo a big partisan favor done at the behest of big labor and put efforts to unionize airline workforces on the same footing they have been on for years. The House bill does not create a new hurdle for unionization. Instead, it restores the long-standing ability of airline employees to make decisions for themselves. As I said, it is unfortunate that kowtowing to big labor has effectively grounded efforts to get a long-term FAA reauthorization off the ground. The lack of a long-term bill is bad for airports all across the country because they don't have the funding stability to plan and complete projects. Kicking the can further down the road is not a viable alternative to actually doing what is in the best interest of passengers, commercial users of air transportation, and our airlines and airports. As a Senate conferee to the FAA bill, I stand ready to do everything I can to break the cycle of short-term extensions and to do something that hasn't been done around here for more than 7.5 years and get the FAA reauthorization off the ground. So having said all that, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of H.R. 2553, which was received from the House. I ask unanimous consent that the bill be read a third time and passed, the motion to reconsider be laid on the table, upon the table, and that any statements relating to the bill appear at this point in the record.
Is there objection?
Reserving the right to object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President, Senator from Utah is my friend. We've worked on many things together. On this particular moment in time, we're in disagreement. What he has presented to you is one side of a story, one side of a debate, and said, unless you accept the House Republican position on this, which has not been resolved, we're going to lay off 4,000 people at midnight tonight. Do you think that means anything to them? What I offered was a clean extension that didn't get into the merits of this, which said, let's put this debate aside and that debate aside and keep the agency working, the Federal Aviation Administration. Said, nope, you either take the Republican approach or else. And incidentally, he told you at the outset, the House Republicans have gone home. They're gone. They sent this over and said, take it or leave it or close it down. That's not a very sound choice for our country. I'm sorry that the senator from Utah objected to a clean extension of this so that we could keep up these operations. I object to this because I don't believe it's a fair approach.
Mr. President?
Objection is heard.
Mr. President?
Senator from Utah.
You know, a lot of us on this side are getting a little tired of the National Labor Relations Board usurping the power of the Congress of the United States and enacting labor laws that by fiat of the board that are hardly going to be upheld by the courts, but nevertheless it'd take years to reduce them and take them away. In this particular case, the National Mediation Board has changed a long-standing rule that when you vote to unionize it, it's the vote of all employees. And this means that you could have a vote, and this is what I think the House is trying to stop and to change. It means that you could have a vote with less than half of the employees, and it would be the majority of those who vote. Now, that's never been the law, it's never been the case, and it's clearly a heavy-handed approach towards the FAA, and I think that's one reason why the House has taken this very strong position. Now, I understand my friend on the other side. We are friends, and we work together on so many issues, and I have a tremendous amount of admiration for him and his ability to lead and to express himself. He's one of the best people of expression in the history of the Senate, and I have great respect for him. But that's one of the main reasons why the House is up in arms on this, and I have to say our side is up in arms as well. We've got to stop this changing laws without the consent of Congress just by the fiat of those on the National Labor Relations Board and the National Mediation Board. It's not right. It's upturning hundreds of years of labor law, and frankly, it's wrong, and I'm on the side of the House in this matter because of it.
Mr. President.
Senator from Illinois.
Perhaps if I were as persuasive as my colleague has just said, he would not have objected. But having said that, when we speak about heavy hands, we don't have to worry about the heavy hand of the House on this issue because they went home. They took off. They left, which means that 4,000 people will be furloughed this evening. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the consideration of calendar number 104S300.
Clerk will report.
Calendar number 104S300, a bill to prevent abuse of government charge cards.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent the committee reported amendments be agreed to. The bill is amended be read a third time and passed. The motion to reconsider be laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate, and any statements relating to the matter be placed in the record as if read.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that on Monday, July 25th, 2011, at 4:30 p.m., the Senate proceed to executive session to consider the following nominations. Calendar number 83 and 84, that there be 1 hour for debate equally divided in the usual form, that upon the use or yielding back of time, the Senate proceed to vote without intervening action or debate. On calendar number 83 and 84 in that order, the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate, that no further motions be in order, that any related statements be printed in the record, that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action, and the Senate then resume legislative session.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it adjourn until 2 p.m. on Monday, July 25th, that following the prayer and pledge, the journal of proceedings be approved to date, the morning hour be deemed expired, and the time for the two leaders be reserved for their use later in the day, that following any leader remarks, the Senate be in a period of morning business until 4:30 p.m., with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each. Further, that at 3:40 p.m., the Senate observe a moment of silence in memory of Officer Jacob J. Chestnut and Detective John M. Gibson of the United States Capitol Police, who were killed 13 years ago in the line of duty defending this Capitol the people who work here and its visitors against an armed intruder. Finally, I ask unanimous consent that following morning business, the Senate proceed to executive session under the previous order.
Without objection.
Mr. President, the first roll call vote next week will be at approximately 5:30 p.m. on confirmation.